On 24th February 2022, not even a month ago, Russia launched a large-scale invasion of Ukraine, one of its neighbors to the southwest. Early reports declared it the largest conventional warfare operation in Europe since World War II. It marked a major escalation between the countries, which had been in a state of conflict since 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Puneka News in yet another episode of Soldier Speak. Today, we will discuss and understand the key reasons, agenda, and probable outcome of the ongoing war in Ukraine. To provide insight and analysis, we have in the studio our eminent guests, Lieutenant General Sanjeev Kanal and Colonel Ajay Singh. Lieutenant General Sanjeev Kanal is a third-generation army officer commissioned in the Regiment of Artillery in 1981, an alumnus of National Defense Academy, Indian Military Academy, College of Defense Management, and the National Defense College. The general has vast command and staff experience. He has been conferred with the Param Vishisht Seva Medal in 2020 and the Ati Vishisht Seva Medal in 2018 by the Honorable President of India. Welcome, sir. I'm so glad you could join us for today's discussion.
Thank you, Vivek. Pleasure to be on the show with you.
We also have with us Colonel Ajay Singh, writer and historian with 5 books to his name. His latest book, Final Draft, was launched a month ago. Sir, a warm welcome.
Thank you, Vivek. As always, a pleasure being on this show and looking forward to something which is so relevant and so contemporary to all of us.
Right, sir. So, without much ado, I would like to hear from Kanal, sir, that the Russian invasion of Ukraine has suddenly changed the picture in the Europe and, of course, entire world. Nobody is untouched. So, why do you think the Russian President Vladimir Putin attacked Ukraine? What are the reasons for this conflict?
So, Vivek, the reasons are not far to find, and the reasons are more personal than basis of the country's requirement or even the country's intent. I think President Putin, ever since he was a young man, has not been in favor or was not in favor of the breakup of the the USSR. And in his subconscious mind, I think Ukraine has always been a part of Russia because there is a lot of commonality in the language, in the culture of Ukraine and Russia. And I think somewhere in his mind, this breakup between Russia and Ukraine should not have ever happened. And I think he blames, the architects of the breakup of the USSR. As far as history is concerned, you would remember that even in the late 1800s, when Napoleon wanted to invade or attack Russia, Belarus and Ukraine were the 2 regions which were giving strategic depth to Russia. The same thing happened in the Second World War also, where Ukraine was when Hitler wanted to attack Russia and invade Russia, Ukraine actually was the country or the region which gave strategic depth to Russia. Now, when after the World War, when the Warsaw Pact sort of dissolved, but NATO continued, I think there was a promise which was made to Russia by the West. I'm using the term West very, very broadly, that not an inch eastward movement would take place of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. But over the years, by and by, NATO's footprint has kept creeping eastwards and it has come almost to the doorstep of Russia. This is the grouse that President Vladimir Putin has. So his reasons for doing what he has done is to protect his nation. It is to protect Russia from the eastward creep of the influence of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. He feels threatened because there is no strategic depth to his country from NATO. This is as per him. That is one. And the other thing which I had already said, that in his mind, Ukraine should never have, broken away from Russia, even when the USSR broke up. That uh, he needs validation of his actions from his countrymen, but unfortunately, he's not getting it at the moment. But more of that as we go along in the program. Historically, Russia has always meddled in the affairs of Ukraine, right from the year 1991 when Ukraine actually became independent. Then in 1994, during the Budapest Memorandum, when all the nuclear weapons of Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons. Then in December 2004, the Orange Revolution took place, where Yushchenko was brought into power with the support of Russia. Then the first time that Russia actually, said something against the inclusion of Ukraine as a member of NATO was in 2008. And then in the year, 2014, the Euromaidan protests, they prompted a change in the government. There were widespread protests in Kiev against the then president's plan to align with Russia and not the EU. And as late as March 2014, Russia annexed Crimea. So Putin, because the Black Sea Fleet was based out of Crimea, so Russia did that in 2014. And in 19, the current president of Crimea, of Ukraine, Zelensky was elected. And as late as December 21, Putin has demanded security guarantees. He does not want Ukraine to become a part of NATO. And then in February, the month just gone by, Russia has recognized Donetsk and Luhansk as independent states. This is all part of a larger plan to actually invade Ukraine and to signal to the world that NATO cannot be allowed to move even an inch further east. So those are the reasons in broad as to why Putin has done what he has done. Vivek?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So,
Hey, Sanju, I think what General Kanal has brought out has been beautifully put. The fact that this is actually a one-man invasion. It is the personality of Putin and his dream of getting a greater Akhand Russia, if I can call it that, back into the fold of the former Soviet Union. But if you take a look at the map which you showed last, which General Kanal described how NATO has expanded eastward. It tells you actually quite clearly that NATO has now touched Russia's borders. We can see Ukraine and Belarus now. If NATO comes to Ukraine, it's like they put it, their missiles are now 4 minutes away from Moscow. We have nowhere further to retreat beyond this. And again, historically, it has been Ukraine and Belarus which have been the buffer for any invasion. So perhaps he wanted that buffer to remain even now. And if you take a look at it very logically, it's not a very far-fetched demand. But the manner in which he's gone about it is a little too high-handed.
right, sir. So, I believe the Russians had unleashed what is known as hybrid form of war fighting. And when they attacked on Feb 24, I want to know first from Ajay Singh, sir, that how did their attack develop? Like, as a military man, you could tell us what happened in the flow of actions that developed gradually.
Okay. So again, I'm going to request you to go back to the maps, which you have got with us. So that way, as a military man, once comfortable, more than that, I think the audience will be able to understand it, not the subsequent ones. Now, going to the next one, please. The next maps. Vivek? Yeah, badhiya, very good. Now, if you take a look at it, Russia has been poisoning its troops both in Russia and in Belarus, which is actually the client state in the north. You can see it on this map out here. Like all armies, they said we are doing exercises and they moved their troops to the borders and then they didn't move back out here. Now, you take a look at this map, you'll find that by having troops in both Russia and Belarus, they're in a position to attack from both directions, the east and the north. In what in armor, as a tank man, you can say it's a classical pincer movement to encircle Kiev and Kharkov. Right now, they had amassed their troops. They were putting up the demands with NATO, which, like I brought out, was not very far fetched. They also, if you take a look at Putin, was also building up the grounds with China. He had gone as a guest of honor to Beijing, right? So obviously building the ground for it, and he also very conveniently attacked after the Moscow Games were over, after the Beijing Olympic Games were over, right? Now, when he moved, if you take, as you asked me, the military man, when he moved in through the western areas with I beg your pardon, the eastern areas which General Kanal had moved, the Donbass region as they call it, which is already held by Russian separatists. Russia recognized those regions, Donetsk and Luhansk, as independent states. They have also annexed Crimea in the south, right? So they used the south as a prong to go northwards. But their major attacks came towards Kiev and Kharkov from the north and from the east. And frankly, I think this is what took most of the Western world and most military planners by surprise. Because most expected that his attacks would be restricted to the western region, it would be restricted to Crimea. They would capture that area quite easily. They would have captured it, in fact, and they would have declared it independent, and Putin would have got his aims. But by attacking the heart, yeah, this is it, by attacking the heart of Ukraine, Kiev, their capital city, Kharkov, their second largest city, obviously it means that Putin has a larger ball game in mind. He wanted to humiliate Ukraine and NATO. And I have a slight feeling that perhaps he has now miscalculated because they're getting greater resistance than they anticipated. Today, we are in the 6th day of the war, as you know, right? They are approaching Kiev. I've heard today morning that Kharkov has fallen. I really do not know how true that is or not, but Kharkov will fall. But Kiev is coming so close to it. So, what unfolds in the next 3 or 4 days will decide the shape of the war.
Right, sir. And of course, each day we are getting new developments. Today morning, it was not, I think, few hours ago, the Ukrainian president has agreed to join the European Union. So that was the
Correct.
recent development. And that's
Correct.
a historic step, I believe. So can you shed how that will impact the course of the war now?
Okay. You see what happens. It is not just the European Union. This is a symbolic gesture because European Union is not a military alliance. It is a commercial and it's more an integrated organization more than anything else. This is symbolic because they say he's actually telling Russia we are not deterred by what you're saying, right? But more than that, we must understand what is it now that what is the European Union and what is the West doing to help Ukraine. And today,
Right.
after you see, initially, I must confess that the response, the Western lukewarm was very tepid and lukewarm. But now, see, they are seeing that the Ukrainian resistance has increased, so it's actually enhanced. Firstly, USA sent about $500 million. So, okay, they've sent about now 2,500 anti-tank missiles, plus the sanctions, which we should come to later on. So, the longer the Ukrainian forces hold on, the greater the chance of pushing them back. And remember, this is the classical confrontation of an attacker with a defender. An attacker requires greater resources and he has to succeed. A defender requires lesser resources to defend his countries. All he has to do is hold on. If he holds on, it's a victory for him. So, this is where the military dilemma comes. Should the Ukrainians just hold on? It's a victory for them. Unless Putin gets his entire military objective, which is Kiev, it is a defeat for him.
Right. So from Russia's strategy of attack, I believe that Russia had unleashed what is known as hybrid form of war fighting. What exactly is it, and how did they use it? Kanal, sir, I would like to know that from you.
Okay, hybrid warfare. So, today, with the development of technology, with the development of strategy, and people looking at not just conventional war, but a holistic approach to a military campaign. It's also called by other names like multi-domain operations, gray zone warfare, asymmetric warfare, linear warfare, war by other means. So today, if you want to actually, what is the aim of war? The aim of war is to make your adversary capitulate to your will, right? Now, it's not just conventional use of armor, conventional use of infantry, conventional use of artillery, and other supporting arms to make the enemy capitulate to or subject uh, to your will. But they also use any other means available to them, which may be non combat operations, to ensure that they break the enemy's will to fight. And these non-combat operations could include cyber warfare, it could include psychological warfare, information campaign, propaganda, even stoking insurgencies, terrorism, you name it. Any use of technology to ensure that the adversary gets so petrified, gets so terrified that it capitulates and they say, all right, we will do what you want us to do. So this is hybrid warfare. So it is conventional combat operations and coupled with all other non-military actions to give a holistic color to your entire campaign. So that is hybrid warfare in a nutshell. And Russia has done it even in this campaign very nicely. Cyber attacks, which preceded even the amassing of the troops on the borders in Belarus and in Crimea. Before that, their cyber attacks had already started. Slowly, they started targeting their networks. They've got the internet down. They have been sending out social media messages to change the perception of the Ukrainian people with regard to what Ukraine wants to do, basically to become a European nation as part of NATO. They have been doing this information warfare, psychological warfare on the citizens of Ukraine, and targeting government websites, stoking the insurgency or the demand for independence in those two regions which I had named earlier, Donetsk and Luhansk, right? And so all this has preceded the conventional, invasion or attack operation, advanced to attack operation, which they have undertaken. Unfortunately, what has happened is that the momentum of this operation has slowed down because I think the Ruskies went wrong in appreciating the kind of resistance that they are going to get from the Ukrainian people. So I believe that their logistics have been targeted very heavily by the Ukrainians. And I think the will of the Ukrainian people is to not give in to the Russians' might. So they are resisting really hard. And like Colonel Ajay said a little while ago, that slowly as more and more aid is flowing in, more and more moral support is coming into Ukraine, the resistance to the Russian invasion is hardening. It is becoming harder and more stiff. And therefore, I think President Putin is going to find it very difficult to get complete supremacy over the Ukrainian nation. He may get Kiev. He's already got Kharkiv as per some reports, but he may get Kiev. And if he has got the heart of the nation, that means he has got the nation. But amongst whole lot of pockets of resistance, this, because ultimately urban warfare is not like you fight in the plains of Europe, where you move large scale armored columns and supported by artillery, and then the infantry comes and mops up, and the moment you have captured territory, it's yours. No, in urban warfare, you have to go street by street, area by area, locality by locality, and the resistance will keep springing up. You may have gone into an area, cleared it, and gone to the next, but before you know it, from somewhere else, the resistance has sprung up behind you. So it's going to be a long haul. While Putin has got into Ukraine, I don't know when he'll be able to get out.
Right, sir. So I would just not click that yesterday Russia activated its nuclear arsenal as it was available. So do we see going that far?
Right. A lovely question that you have asked. And this is a question which has been tickling the minds of most strategic analysts, over the past couple of days, ever since Putin publicly, announced that he's told his nuclear forces to be on high alert. It's a signal. This is what I feel. It's a signal, because when he started getting boxed in by all the support of the international community for Ukraine, when the sanctions started getting more and more severe, I think it was a signal to the world at large that I am prepared to go to any length to make sure that I achieve my aim in Ukraine. So please lay off. But how far this threat is going to be executed, one cannot say. People are taking it seriously, but not so seriously. You know that the United States has not given a similar increase or escalation in the alert levels of its nuclear forces. So maybe President Biden is looking at not escalating the nuclear domain or the nuclear dimension of this conflict. Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons long back. So when this statement has been made, it is not for Ukraine, it is for the rest of the world, saying that if you push me to the wall, I am going to press that red button, and then you will be responsible for the consequences. So I feel it's a signal to the rest of the world that let me do what I want to do in Ukraine, you people lay off, because this is my war, right? Why are you trying to interfere in it? And he feels that the rest of the world, especially the West, the United States and the members of NATO, have gone back on their words when they had said that they will not come any closer to the Russian borders. The NATO will not come eastwards. But progressively, NATO has, in an incremental way, it has moved forward, and now it is right at the doorstep of Russia. So, from one perspective, what President Putin is saying is also right. He's also scared. After all, the president of the country has to ensure the security of his nation. And if the adversaries are coming so close to your doorstep, then you need to, girdle up and guard. So, yeah, but definitely the nuclear card which he's playing, as of now, I feel it is just signaling, and I don't think he's going to he's going to do that. But one will have to wait and watch, because if you go back in history and see, President Putin is almost behaving like a dictator, right? People in Russia are not happy with what he's done. I believe almost 40% of the Russian population is against this invasion of Ukraine, right? So there are protests within the country, but he is still like a dictator. He is going ahead with what he wants to do, and how dictators behave, one cannot predict. And there are examples in history, and the most recent is Hitler. He did what he did. I mean, the rest of the world was watching, and he kept doing wrong things, and after a while, I think their brain stopped working, and then they just keep doing carrying out actions based on their big egos. So one will have to wait and watch, Vivek.
When General Kanal had mentioned earlier on, he's right. It's a one-man war. It is a war which has been determined by the personality of one man, who is now in a position of absolute power to strengthen his hold on power. Now, remember, he's banking on a swift victory. The nuclear alert is nothing more than posturing. It counts for nothing, right? But Look at it. When he's going to Kiev, he had said early victory. He would come back like Alexander the Great or Caesar, with a lot of people clapping in the streets, all conquering heroes come back. Now, if Kiev resists, they have to resist for 4 more days. The next 2 days are very critical. What will he have to do to take Kiev? Put in mammoth force, more artillery, more armor, more airstrikes, more civil casualties. And there's one truth you must remember. He is capable of using mammoth force, but the more force he uses, the more he turns the world against him. Because this force is being used against Europeans, not against the Iraqis. So the US could have got away with it, but Putin will not. And rightly so. So he is now in a catch-22 situation. And these 2 days are the critical days of the war. He's going to tilt it either way now.
So you mentioned twice about the response of West, the USA, and NATO. I would like you to please put some light on. Do you think it is enough, the responses that we got from the West, USA, and NATO, that are they enough to deter Russia, or something more could have been done? What do you think?
As we made out, it's been not enough to deter Russia at all. They did what they wanted to. They've come in, right? Now the die is cast. But today, honestly, they did not do enough initially. Actually, there should have been more diplomacy at play. And I'm quite, though Russia basically wanted NATO to move back, I'm sure in the back channels they would have agreed to it. Okay, Baba, we will not come to Ukraine. But he wanted it in writing, which nobody will give. So obviously the demands of Putin were such that they were designed to fail. He wanted to invade, come what may. Now, when he came in, actually, NATO was divided initially. Germany was not very keen on joining, and they wanted to have that. Because remember, Russia is supplying 40% of European gas at 1/3 the cost of what it comes. They're also dependent upon them. They don't want a war. I mean, Russia, Germany, France all have very good relations and very good economic ties with each other, right? So initially, and also Trump had divided NATO quite a bit, if you remember, in the past 2-3 years. So yes, the initial response was disjointed. They sent aid, they sent anti-tank missiles, all that was fine. But I think it's only when the invasion actually happened is when they got their act together. And the sanctions which they unleashed have actually, sanctions normally don't work. But this sanctions which they've unleashed are very strong ones. They go SWIFT, the SWIFT banking system. What it means by that is now Russia banks will not be able to trade across the world. It also means now Putin had got a $640 billion foreign reserves just to guard against sanctions. He cannot withdraw them now because these reserves are lying in foreign banks. So there are steps nobody imagined, that such strong steps will be taken. Now, look at Germany. Nord Stream 2, it was a gas pipeline which would take gas from Russia under sea, 1,200 kilometers into Germany. He would have got mammoth revenues from that. Germany has halted its certification. And not postponed. The word is halted the certification of gas line. That means they will lose. Germany has tripled its defense budget in 2 days. They made 200 billion. So Putin's, whatever he hoped to attain, he's actually getting the opposite. He hoped to divide NATO, he is unifying NATO. He hoped to have a rapid victory, he is being stalled. And I think the response of NATO and USA has been a balanced one. Amongst other things, like General Kanal brought out, they have not reacted to his nuclear bluff. Biden didn't raise their nuclear alert level because he's calling their bluff. And the more Putin is pushed against the wall, the more aggressive he gets, the more he'll bluster, and the more he'll turn the world against him.
Okay, so yes, they have played their crucial roles effectively as far as NATO and the West they are concerned. So what is the status of the war now? we have analyzed the current situation and how it is going to unfold. Kanal sir, how do you think it will end? Will Russia stop, or will they go ahead till they capture all of Ukraine? And what will be the actions after that?
So it's a difficult question to answer, Vivek. Because how do you predict the end result or the culmination point of a campaign which has been launched by a crazy person? That is one difficult to predict it. But I will make an attempt to put things in perspective. Uh, Colonel Ajay has already told you how the operation has commenced and how it has progressed till now. And he said that the second largest city of Ukraine is already probably uh, under the control of the Russians. And the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, is now totally encircled by the Russian forces. And I believe, as per certain news reports, that the convoys are as long as 40 kilometers long. The war fighting machinery of Russia. While Ukraine is still holding on, Kiev is still not fallen. But I guess it's just a matter of time because uh, the momentum of such heavy war fighting material which Russia has brought into this campaign. Sorry, excuse me. It is just a matter of time before that city falls. So while Kiev may fall, but Ukraine would not fall. Symbolically, you can say that if Kiev is taken, Russia has won the war. But because of the resistance by the Ukrainians, because of the anger in the minds of the Ukrainians, for Russia, this war is not going to end so soon. So there is going to be resistance, and it may take years before you can get rid of the resistance movement.
Yes.
So that is what I feel. This is how it will end. One can't say, while Ajay said that next 2 days are crucial for the capture of Kiev, yes, but the direction that this war will take, because I feel that it is going to transform from a full-fledged conventional war into an insurgency. So Russia probably has bitten off more than it can chew by having launched this kind of offensive into Ukraine. The the reaction of the rest of the world, which was brought out by Colonel Ajay in terms of the severity of the sanctions, it has played a very major adverse effect on Russia's economy, Russia's ability to trade with the International Committee of Nations. And the ruble has plummeted yesterday. Everybody knows that. And as a reaction to that, Russia has raised its interest rates by almost 200%. So which central bank of a country has interest rates of 20%? So he's trying to save the Russian economy from falling into a morass like Venezuela or Nigeria. But I don't know whether he will succeed. So yeah. So the answer to your question as to how it will end, one cannot predict. I'm just saying it's going to be a long haul. Ukraine is not going to capitulate so easily. While he may gain control of the capital and gain control of the systems in that country, but the resistance will continue and it will be supported by the rest of the world. It will
You
be
know,
supported by the rest of the world, at least by the rest of the Western world. So that's how it's going to be.
and
Yes,
also there
Ajay.
is one thing very interesting that's come about. It is that leadership provided by the President Zelensky. Take a look
Yes.
at it. He's proved to be he was a comedian on television,
Yeah.
a stand-up comedian. But look at that wonderful wartime leadership he's provided his country. Those images of
Yes.
him going around the front lines, I mean, him telling the Western world, the USA offered to fly him out. He said, I don't want your aircraft. Send me anti-tank ammunition instead. So
Yes.
this leadership is so essential. You saw what happened in Afghanistan. The Taliban came close. President Ghani called on the helicopter with all his money and ran away. So the city collapsed. But a strong
Yeah.
leadership is a symbol. Now look at what the effect is going to happen. like General Kanal brought out, Kiev may or may not fall. If it falls, it'll be reduced to rubble, which people will not accept also. And reducing a huge city is mammoth. But the pockets of resistance will continue. And the pockets are going to be inspired by the actions of their leader and their army. Now remember, there is one more political. The Russian one of the aims was to replace Zelensky with a pro-Russian leader. But now the popular sentiment for him is so high. You mean to say any other guy will be able to take over? No, they will not accept it. The Ukrainians will not accept it. So this war, even if the conventional phase finishes, it will continue. And I think the bear has bitten off a little more than it can chew right now. And let's see how it falls. I think the conventional war will go on for about, because Putin has to have a victory to show. He has to have a victory to show. Now he's painted himself into a corner. That victory has to be Kiev. So how he takes it, using mammoth force, whatever, but he will take it symbolically. Then maybe he will just, if he decide to make a march through, he may just withdraw all his troops back to the border and say, we have taught them a lesson. We do not want any more. That might be a good face-saving thing for him. But should he decide to continue, face an insurgency, all I can tell him is he's a man who has visions of the Soviet Union for Russia. The Soviet Union met its end when it invaded Afghanistan. He should learn that lesson of history and not repeat it here.
Right, sir. So it just clicked. Are you saying that Russia has unintentionally started a Cold War with the West? Maybe intentionally or unintentionally.
So I think that's a given. The moment he decided to invade Ukraine against popular wisdom or the popular sentiment in the rest of the world, I think he has started. So Russia is now isolated. As far as the West is concerned, it has very few friends. Though there is a very big guy sitting there north of where we are sitting, good friend, and then he's got a couple of small friends, but that's all he has. So yes, so the Cold War, in a way, yes, it has restarted.
Okay, and since you mentioned it, of course, I would like to, and all our audience would like to know that how has this action, the Russia-Ukraine war, shaped the world balance of power? How has it affected China? Which seems to be the biggest beneficiary of all.
Yeah.
The big friend sitting north of us.
That is what I said. So Ajay can take it on. Yeah.
He put it on General Kanal about nicely. They got a big friend and a small green friend sitting close to him who's trying very hard to get into that embrace. Right? But yes, the Cold War has started. No doubt. Europe is now the arena. No doubt in that. Now, how is it going to affect the balance of power? The earlier Cold War was between the Soviet Union and the USA. There were ideological wars of democracy versus communism. China, this war, the balance of China is not how power has shifted towards China. And without doing a thing, they have managed to attain it. I don't know whether intentional or what it was. Because remember, the West was closing ranks against China after 2019. They realized it is the threat. It's action in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, in Ladakh. No, it is not a peaceful rise any longer. The way they were taking all the institutions. So AUKUS was coming up, Quad was coming up. NATO was saying, the European Union was saying we're going to shift towards the Indo-Pacific as the area of the greatest threat. Now suddenly the focus has shifted back to Europe. Europe is the arena now. So China will continue what it has to do in the Indo-Pacific. In that way, it is going to be the beneficiary. The other thing is now, assuming Putin gets a victory, takes over Ukraine, will it embolden China to try the same in Taiwan or in Ladakh or in Arunachal? We never know. I mean, The mind of an autocrat is something which one can never really predict or decipher. So remember, now one more thing going to happen is Russia by being isolated, China by being isolated, Russia is going to go closer into China's embrace. And it is a smaller power than China. Its economy is 1/10 the size of China. But if Russia and China get together vis-a-vis the Western world, maybe they form a bloc of Russia, China, Pakistan, Iran. Iran can also come. Maybe even North Korea. They are all the so-called the rogue leaderships. What's the democratic world? The balance of power will be upset completely. So yes, a new Cold War has started. A new balance of power has started. And now India is in the little tight walk between the two of them.
So you mentioned it, the point that is most significant for us all, that how will it affect India? Do you think our stance of neutrality is correct in the circumstance? And what will be the final impact of this war on us, India? Kanal sir.
So I think the stance which has been taken by Prime Minister Modi and by our very accomplished External Affairs Minister, he is the basic advisor, along with the National Security Advisor. I think they have taken the right call. Neutrality in this situation is the right way to go. And for the reasons which I will explain just now. First is that any action of India showing support for either of the blocks, as you may call it, will always be decided by geo strategy, and geography is a big part of geostrategy. So as far as geography is concerned, with India sitting in the underbelly of Asia, and sort of dominating the Indian Ocean and the Indo-Pacific in a sense, there is no need for us to actually take a position on what is happening in Europe, because it does not directly affect us. So that is one point which I wanted to make, saying that neutrality is the right decision as far as realpolitik in international relations is concerned. And it has been accepted by the United States, and it has been appreciated by Russia too. Now, why do I say that Russia has appreciated? Because Russia has been a long time friend of our country. It's not that he's a recent friend. Russia has been a friend ever since India became a nation, an independent nation, and it has come to our aid many times. Even in the 1971 conflict, we all know what happened when the Seventh Fleet was moved in, and how Russia countered it, and that helped us. More than 60% of the weaponry that we have, the weapons platforms that we have in our armed forces, are from Russia. So India could not afford to go against Russia, and it could not afford to even go against its latest strategic partner, which is so important to counter the other, China, as an adversary in the Indo-Pacific. So I think they played it beautifully by abstaining both times in the war, because and rightly so, because there was no need for us to take a position here. There was no need for us to take a position. That is one point. Now, coming to the question of how it will affect us. So it will affect us in two, three domains. Firstly, it will affect us in the economic domain, for sure, because what has happened, you can see what has happened to the prices of oil. It has crossed $102 per barrel yesterday. And this is definitely going to have an effect on the prices of petrol, diesel, and gas in India. And that will lead to increase in prices. So the retail inflation will go up, definitely, right? So that is one. So the economic effect is going to be felt by us, and we will just have to bear it, because there is no counter to that. So that is point one. The second domain in which it will affect us will be security. Colonel Ajay mentioned it in passing, that if Russia succeeds in doing what it has intended to do in Ukraine, then will it embolden China to do something similar in Taiwan and in Arunachal Pradesh and Eastern Ladakh? So the security dimension is also going to be affected by this war, or the outcome of this war. If Putin fails, it may, it may put brakes on China's intentions, because then they will think twice, because having a living example of this kind of invasion. But if he succeeds, then there is no game saying that. I think in the order of priority, Taiwan would be the first, and then it could be Arunachal or Eastern Ladakh. But personally, I feel that uh, if you compare the relationship between Russia and Ukraine, and if you see the relationship between China and India, the probability of China doing something similar in India is lesser. The probability of it doing it in Taiwan is much more, because with Taiwan, it has got overwhelming, superiority in military capability, in economic capability, as far as Taiwan is concerned, and Taiwan is just a few hundred kilometers away from its mainland. So all it has to do is to launch that kind of a thing and pull it back into its embrace. So Taiwan has treaties with the United States where it is guaranteed that they will help them in case of any misadventure by China. But that what will happen then is a matter to be seen. But as far as India is concerned, I think China is not going to try any funny stuff with us, because the Indian armed forces were in 1962, what the Indian economy was in 1962 is not the same today. Today, we are a strong armed force, we are a strong economy, and we have a place in the international community. So I think Xi Jinping will think 20 times before trying to do something in Arunachal or Eastern Ladakh, uh, on the scale that Putin has done with Ukraine. Smaller scale operations, nibbling, salami slicing will continue. That one can't say that they won't do. But a big thing like this, and you have to see also that Ukraine is not a nuclear power, whereas India is. So that's a big deterrent for China. So this is as far as the two dimensions are concerned. And the third dimension is our status in the opinion of the rest of the world in international relations. I think by having done what we have done today or in the past week, the way we have abstained from those two votes, the call for peace and cessation of violence by the Prime Minister to both Mr. Putin and to the Ukrainian president, and also the way we have managed to shape our relationship with NATO, with US, and the rest of the Western world, I think will enhance our standing and our respect in the rest of the world. And so, yeah, this is the good spin-off. And I think the position of neutrality which has been taken was the right way to go. And all credit must go to the people, the think tanks in our national capital.
So much for all the insight that you provided. And of course, outcome of this program will be predicted, but we get to know and with keep discussing other things that anyone please if you would like.
I'm sorry, Vivek, I've lost you. I can't hear you.
I was saying anything that you would like to add.
Sanju, could you relay?
I think the audio of Vivek, the audio is a problem.
Yes. I couldn't hear the last parts, Vivek.
Am I audible?
You could type it out.
I think
Okay.
basically he's asking you to sort of sum up.
Okay. Well, I think to conclude is basically what General Kanal and me both agree on one thing. Yes, the world has changed with this invasion right now. There are no two ways about it. A new war has begun, and how it's going to affect it will have its effect onto us. We are so far playing our cards very well, but we will have to take sides at a later juncture. That I'm sure our diplomacy, our political diplomacy, is doing a very good job of. Besides that, how this invasion is going to end, we don't know. I honestly think, yes, Putin will attain his immediate military aims. But in the long term aims, he would not be able to get it. It would be like Russia. They attained them, I beg your pardon, the Soviet Union, they attained the immediate military aims of coming into Afghanistan and planting their puppet in power. But they've left after 10 years, and the impact on their image disintegrated that nation. Perhaps Russia may pay a similar price, because remember, they've isolated themselves from the world with this act. It is a blatantly wrong action. Friend or no friend, but this action is a blatantly wrong action because uncalled for. So they've isolated themselves economically, in terms of the image, geopolitically, strategically, in every respect, which will affect. It may prove to be the exact opposite of what Putin hoped for. As far as we go, I mean, we have to view the whole thing through only one prism, which is the prism of national interest. As of now, the actions we are doing is right, following only our national interest. We have to stick to that stance and then take it as we go along.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, General Sanjeev Kanal, sir, and of course, Colonel Ajay Singh, sir, for your valuable time and all the inputs. Audiences, we'll keep you updated about the situation, how it unfolds. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you,
Thank
Vivek.
you. A pleasure.